Previously on response to Revolver porn.
Curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal.
And now the thrilling conclusion.
I once had, and I don't have a photo of this one, I once had a 4-inch 617 10 shot. And there were two things I really didn't like about it. One was, being a 10 shot, these little cams here were more like metal fins. And I actually dropped it. It messed up one of the timing fins. And it kind of gave me the impression that not terribly durable. So I don't like, for that reason, I don't like the high capacity 22 caliber revolvers. I just don't. The 6 shots, I think, are just, they're designed originally to be 6 shot. The cams are definitely better when it's a 6 shot. And the other thing is, chambers turning into coal mines or coke factories. So after like 80 rounds or so, I was having a hard time ejecting all 10 cases. I had to like start them off with a chopstick or something to get them moving before I could eject them all. Once I got it home, I now had effectively 11 barrels to clean. Well, this has got 7, so it's, not orders of magnitude better, but it's better. But it shoots just, let me put the snap caps back in so I can try the trigger. But yeah, because this doesn't have an underlug, and like I said, I don't like front heavy guns, this did not, I swapped them out. Plus there was a chance, after having watched your Revolver porn video, it was a chance to add a classic Smith & Wesson to my collection. The trigger on both this and the 617 6-shot, excellent, especially for a 22. You all know that you got to hit a rimfire case pretty hard to set it off, so 22s typically have stiff hammer springs. But this one is really nice. It's heavier than that Ruger I showed you, but that has artificially light springs. This one has a lighter trigger, lighter double action trigger, but this is a center fire revolver. But, considering the weight of the trigger, it's not bad, and it's very crisp let off. Ooh, yeah. The 617 I had a slightly lighter trigger than this, but not quite as clean of a break. It was still very, very good, though. Single action is, oh yeah. Probably, yeah. If the single action on those two 357 Smith & Wessons I showed you were an A, as in letter grades, then this is an A-. It's very, very good. Very accurate. In both single and double action, by the way. I do like to shoot these double action. Although it's got a nice fat target hammer, so you definitely can manage its single action too. Whee! Great, great, great pistol. It's not a pistol, it's a revolver. Well, in the 19th century, all pistols were revolvers, and in the 18th century, all pistols were muzzle-loading flintlocks. So, a pistol is anything, with a barrel under 16 inches and no stock. So, it's a pistol. Speaking of 19th century, and like I said, before I get to the next part, I'm going to put up the picture of the 617 and just make a few comments about that, because I don't have it. It's at the shop on consignment.
The top one here is the 617 that I've got I have on consignment with the Burris Fastfire red dot. Also is the 686 with a previous grip.
This is the Ruger new model Blackhawk convertible in 357 Magnum. This is an awesome gun for the gun range. Now, I wouldn't want to carry this into a social situation, to speak euphemistically. It's got 6 rounds on board, and you're going to need several minutes to reload it once you go through all 6, because they have to be unloaded one at a time. And opening the gate, since it's a new model Blackhawk, opening the gate frees the cylinder to spin on its own. You don't have to do a quarter cock or a half cock to do that. So, and it's distinguished from the 3-screw original model by the 2 pins here, which for some reason keep coming loose. When you shoot 357 with this, these pins like to work their way out. One thing that's really nice about this gun, even with like Federal 357 Magnum 158 grain semi-jacketed soft point, it does not kick a lot. It's heavy, over 2 pounds I should think. This is the 6.5-inch model. And before you say, wait a minute, didn't you sell a 6.5-inch model single 6 because it was too front heavy? Isn't this even more front heavy? I don't actually know that it is because it's got a much bigger hole in the front than the single 6 did. But more to the point, it doesn't feel front heavy. It's a heavier gun than the single 6 was, absolutely. But it doesn't feel it. And I think the reason is because the cylinder for 357 Magnum is so much bigger than the reduced size 22 long rifle cylinder that most of the weight is above my hand and not sticking out in front of it. So even though it's a heavier gun and may have a heavier barrel than the single 6, it still feels better. I mean, it feels awesome actually. And when you blast off a full power 357 round, it rocks upward like this. And because of that, I mean, obviously you have to reacquire when you're shooting, but you kind of have to anyway. But because of that rocking motion, because of the traditional shaped handle, you don't get a lot of felt recoil. You know, one thing a lot of people don't like about these traditionally shaped revolvers is the handle is smaller than it is on a modern revolver. Let me get the other Ruger 357 for comparison. And the grips on the GP100 fill your hand. There's plenty of room on it for all 3 fingers, plus the 4th finger on the trigger and the thumb on the other side. And so there's your hand-filling grips. So why were these so small? Well, 2 reasons actually. Because here, this one, see, there's just barely room for the pinky. What it is because you didn't have any cartridges as powerful as 357 Magnum back in the 19th century. I hope I got that in frame. You didn't have any cartridges that were that powerful. I believe the original Colt, like the original 71 Colt, the one that came out before the Peacemaker, was in 44 rimfire, which was a black powder cartridge. The 73 Peacemaker, I think, was either in 44-40 or 45 Colt. I mean, that's a big bullet, but it's a black powder cartridge. It's just not that powerful, at least back then. I mean, I know you can upload them now and shoot them out of your Marlins without having to worry about the excessive pressure. But one thing people forget about is that because of modern medicine, vaccinations and whatnot, because of a reliable and safe food supply, because of modern sanitation, you're probably not going to get typhoid drinking out of your tap water, although even odds if you get lead poisoning if you're living in some places in Michigan, still not addressed. Because of things like that, people simply grow bigger now than they did in the 1870s. People literally had smaller hands back then. So that's another reason why the grip seems small to us as 21st century people. Or 20th century people living in the 21st century, which is actually more like it. Your sights here, this is what they come with. I believe they're soldered on. If you have the blued model, there's also a stainless steel model, of course, and that comes with rosewood grips. With the blued model, these sights are fixed on, and you're pretty much stuck with them. So I mean, it's not an authentic cowboy gun anyway. And since I only use it for the range, I painted it orange, as you Nutnfancy have recommended people do, and yeah, it works, and it's a cheap fix. It gives me some contrast in a not terribly bright indoor shooting range. I shoot 38 at the indoor range. You know, it only goes out to 50 yards, so you know, why waste full power 357 rounds on that, especially when they're geez, they're just if you're not careful, if you don't shop around, they're like $35 a box. I mean, I don't pay that much. I mean, I shop around, but you know, online mostly. Hammer is good, pretty typical for a 19th century type revolver. It's nowhere near as wide as the one on that Smith & Wesson model 27. I'm sorry, or the Model 17, frankly. But it's adequate. I mean, it works fine. I've never really had a complaint with it. I've never really had any problems with it. But let me show you the conversion cylinder. This is a pouch that my wife made for me out of yarn for the spare cylinder of the single 6. Well, I kept the pouch, obviously, and I use it for the spare cylinder in 9mm parabellum, or 9 NATO, 9x19. Of centerfire cartridges, 9mm is far and away the least expensive. I think the only thing less expensive than 9mm is 22 long rifle, and we'll get to that. So this takes 9mm, and you know, some people expect, well, can you really run 9mm through a 357 and expect any kind of accuracy? Well, I'll tell you, out to 50 feet, which is the limit of the indoor range that I use, it's pretty good. It's snappier than 38 Special. The biggest difference between the new model and the old model is the transfer bar safety. The old model was designed to replace the Colt Peacemaker, the 1873 Colt, the Colt Single Action Army. I mean, which went out of production, I believe, before World War II. So that one, the original 3-screw model, had the 4-position hammer, the one where you couldn't carry it with 6 rounds because you needed to keep your firing pin on an empty chamber. So basically, this is a gun playing a gun, pretending to be another gun. And yes, it is a lead farmer mofos. That was a funny movie. Especially the part where Tom Cruise plays that executive. Whatever you think about Tom Cruise, he is an excellent actor, and he was really good in that fat suit. So, here we go. That is a Cimarron, you know, Uberti. Cimarron's the importer. Cimarron, this is the 1871. 2 years before the Colt Peacemaker came out. So this is the Colt open top. I think this is the Navy version, and I should have it loaded with snap caps. I do. So I flip loading gate open and it still doesn't turn. So what do I have to do? Okay, that position frees. That's the quarter cock position. It frees the loading cylinder, and it's also the safety 6 chambers. Safety checking it there. I forgot to do it earlier. It has the so here's how it works. Quarter cock is safety and cylinder rotation for loading and unloading. Half cocked is actually to release the cylinder from the frame when you're cleaning it. This is the 71 model. Now the 73 model, you know, has quarter cock for safety, half cock for loading and unloading, and then full cock for shooting. For this one's a little different. The half cock is for releasing the cylinder from the frame for cleaning, and then full cock, and it's actually got a very nice trigger. And this is a genuine 19th century design. It is not, of course, a 19th century gun. I bought this new a couple of years ago. This one is 38 Special, not 357 Magnum. Not only is it not chambered for 357 Magnum, but if you try to shoot like a high pressure load out of it, you're going to end up having half of this gun blow into your face. The one thing about it shooting 38 is that the cylinder, that the ejector rod doesn't quite line up with the cylinder when it's clicked into its fixed timing spot, because it's supposed to be a wider chamber. 38 is cheaper than 45, a lot cheaper actually. Oh, I got it in 38. And, you know, paper targets don't usually put up that much resistance anyway, so this is a fun gun to shoot. It is, this is a 7-inch barrel. Now that's left over from the old days, from black powder times, you know. The reason the 38 special cartridge is so big is because originally it was intended to be filled with sulfurous gunpowder, the black powder. Whereas now with modern nitro powder, smokeless powder, you only have to put a little tiny bit in, and you know, mostly it's just wasted space. So somebody in I think in the 20s or the 30s had the brilliant idea, why don't we take this 38 special cartridge and fill it with modern nitro powder? Well, that's what a 357 Magnum is. Now, they made the case a tiny bit bigger so that you don't accidentally load it into a 38 special gun. But essentially, 357 Magnum is a 38 special full, loaded full of nitro powder. Whereas the 38 special is the same case full of black powder. This was obviously built for black powder in mind. To get the most effective use out of black powder, you needed a long barrel, because most of that stuff is still going to be burning when the bullet leaves the chamber. So you need a long barrel. The sights, you're going to love this. There's a rear sight there on the hammer. It's a notch. How do you adjust it? Well, short answer, you really shouldn't. You shouldn't adjust it, just leave it alone. But if you really, really want to, yeah, here's your adjustment tool, jeweler's file. Just open up that V a little bit. Of course, you can never readjust it after that. Yeah, I'll take a lot off. I'll just add more later. No. And of course, it's got that gold front post as a front sight. If you're breaking this down, this is what you got. Here's your spindle there. That also, through this notch with this, I don't know what you want to call it, this metal tab is what holds everything together. Here's your cylinder, not that much different than a modern cylinder, except the center bore is somewhat larger. This was not really a post-war conversion. I mean, it kind of was, but it left the factory as this model. I forgot whether it was the 51 or the 58 that it was based on. And when the war was over, they had a lot of parts left over. So what they did was they remade the cylinder so it accepted the bored through metallic cartridges. Smith & Wesson had the patent on that, and they had to wait for that to expire before they started introducing these. And of course the plunger necessary for loading the cap and ball revolver was replaced with an ejector for the metallic cartridges. These were made out of parts for an earlier model pistol, but they left the factory as 1871. I think they were called Mason and Richards conversions. So they were new, brand new, as post-war conversion models. Cartridge conversion models. So to put it all back together, well, you got to half cock it to free the cylinder, or allow it to go back on. And there we go. Here's the cylinder. And you remember the scene in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly when Tuco was putting one of these together?
Well, you know, tractor battery's good too. You know, you run your digital semicircle.
And now that brings us to our final entry. It's something I just picked up a couple of days ago. Here it is. What? Sorry. Wrong one. Wrong exhibit. There. Isn't that the Ruger Blackhawk we just showed you? No, it is not. This is the new model single 6 It has the adjustable sight, so I think that makes it the super single 6. And unlike the Blackhawk, you can actually remove that and put a different sight on. You can get a high-vis sight for it if you want. What I think I'll probably do, since, again, this is only for the shooting range, is put a small mount here and attach a Burris Fastfire 2 with it, on it. And that way you can shoot indoors with both eyes open. It just makes it easier. But it's not authentic. You can't, it's not going to look right. Well, you know, there's nothing authentic about this gun. First of all, it's a creation of the 1970s. It's a new model based on an older model, so it's a gun pretending to be another gun, not a gun pretending to be another gun, pretending to be a third gun. And it's smaller than a Blackhawk or a Colt Peacemaker because it's for rimfire. Now I understand that there's a 32 H&R Magnum version for people who enjoy spending money on impossible to find ammunition. Now, I imagine they reload their own, and it's like cowboy action shooters who like it. Maybe some of the, you know, the female shooters. So this is the blued model. Ruger bluing is certainly respectable. They do a nice job. It's not the same as the Smith & Wesson bluing from the 1970s, but it's good. I'm always drinking these seltzers. I'm not supposed to drink soda anymore because apparently drinking your own weight in high fructose corn syrup every day is bad for you. There's a stainless steel version too with rosewood grips. I like this one. It's cheaper, of course, so I like that about it. But also, the blued version comes with these plastic textured grips. I like to think of them as like imitation gutta percha on its aluminum grip frame, which I like to think of as imitation brass. So it's a much nicer grip, I feel, than the Rosewoods, even though the Rosewoods look better and are costlier. And like the Blackhawk, this also comes with a conversion cylinder. And here it is. Here it is, Miss America. Here she is. And that is the unfluted 22 Magnum rimfire cylinder. I suppose you could use that as a paperweight if you like to leave your office windows open in the summertime. I suppose it could make a nice ornament on your Christmas tree. Fishing weight if you do deep sea fishing. The point is that 22 Magnum ammunition is, I don't know, isn't it like $18 a box now for a box of 50? It's expensive. It is more expensive than 38 Special. So, given the choice, I'd rather pull out the other gun, the Blackhawk, and shoot the 38 Special. But there is one use for the 22 Magnum that I think some people might be inclined to overlook, and that is as a rat gun. With 22 Magnum shot loads, you're going to get a much more thorough spread pattern, with I believe slightly larger projectiles than you get with 22 long rifle shot for killing rats. The design and size, nice handling. This is a 5.5 inch, and it's a much better handling than the longer 6 inch. Well, you know, it's only an extra inch of barrel, but yeah, think of your physics though. Think of, yeah, you got another inch of steel out here. It's only another inch of steel, but it's in the place that it has the most possible leverage at the end of the barrel. Now, where did the design from the single 6 come from? I'm sure you're all wondering that tremendously. You see, when a Ruger Blackhawk and a Smith & Wesson Model 17 love each other very much, sometimes they get very close, and, well, I don't know the rest of that speech because I never heard it, but I understand that's how the Birds and the Bees speech starts. For me, I learned the Birds and the Bees, like everybody else did, from my foul-mouthed 6th grade classmates. So obviously one is a rimfire version of the other. And of course, here you have the alternative to the single 6, which was the Smith & Wesson Model 27. And when I say it's an alternative to the single 6, what I really mean is the single 6 is an alternative to it. Gee, if you had to get rid of one of them, which one would it be? That's a stupid question. You already know the answer to that, I hope, if you've been paying attention. These are nice, but there's nothing special about them. These are a work of art, and a work of art that you can't get anymore. At least not brand new. The Smith & Wesson is the better shooter. One, it has a double action pull. It's probably speed loaders available for it, but I never bother for 22. It's got that deep bluing. It came with very nice wooden grips, which you can also get with this model. There's just no comparison. This is orders of magnitude the preferred shooter. It just the way it feels tells you that this is a really good gun. Ooh, everything is just fitted together so tightly. It's got a narrow cylinder gap. I'm not going to show you with a flashlight, but all the revolvers I've shown you so far have very narrow cylinder gaps, except this one. It's wider than you would expect it to be, is the most realistic way of putting it. As a utilitarian matter, I would wear this. I mentioned I'm an amateur astronomer. I would wear this out to the observing field, because you're out in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night. You've got to get away from city lights. There are a lot of city lights here near the East Coast, in the eastern, northeastern corner of the country, and because there's so much humidity in the air, those lights can be seen from far away. The humidity kind of diffuses them. So yeah, I wouldn't mind having this on my belt, again, for rodents, feral dog, or anything else that might come around that could be a problem. I mean, 22 long rifle is going to take care of most of it. We don't have any bears around here. We don't have any elk or moose around here. It would be good for that. Stainless, might be a good idea if you're going to be in a damp environment. Now, the only thing you need to do is to attach a light to it. So, there we go. There's the flashlight. And we'll just stick it on there. No. Here. No. No. Oh, yeah. No gun lights for revolvers. This is going to end up being your night sights. Here's the gun in the right hand with the left hand illuminating both the sights and the target. You know what? I know it kind of sucks, but it's called a handgun, not a hands gun. Houston, Apollo 13, we have a problem. Repeat, we have a problem.